If you're playing games of Warhammer 40k 10th edition straight out of the Leviathan box set, it seems that the Space Marines may be in for a bit of an easy victory. Let's talk about the sides of the Leviathan box, points discrepancies between the two, and it might mean a Space Marine victory for Games Workshop's campaign as well. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about the Leviathan launch box, and I thought it was just worth a quick video to set people's expectations about the models from the box, and if you happen to be playing Space Marines vs Tyranids without any other models. I'm certainly not saying that this is the most dramatic news in the world. It's kind of expected that Games Workshop's box sets aren't particularly well balanced, but I did think it was kind of interesting that they dropped hints as to just how much they were unbalanced and what sort of numbers of models you might need to even the score. Basically, over the last few days, Games Workshop have allowed the release of the datasheets from the Leviathan box set, and it looks like the NDAs of the content creators who were sent boxes of this have had them expire, so they're allowed to post their battle reports involving Leviathan to YouTube. In the vast majority of these, the Tyranids have just been getting crushed left, right and centre. The Space Marines seem to be the more powerful force in the box, even in these showcase games where there might even be a little bit of an element of trying to make sure that the games run a bit closer, just to provide a bit more of an entertaining viewing experience. A lot of the Tyranid units tend to struggle versus Space Marine power armor with either AP-1 or worse weapons. There might be some element of a bad matchup between the two, but according to an article from Games Workshop, apparently it's a little bit more than that. It is kind of interesting that unlike the Indomitor's launch box of 9th edition, the Leviathan points are a bit different this time round. So if you're playing Space Marines versus Tyranids in Leviathan, the Space Marine player will have a decent amount more points, it would seem, to the extent where you'd need to add quite a lot more Tyranid models to even up the score. In Games Workshop's promo of their Warhammer Plus battle report that they played the other day, they said that the Space Marine side is literally just the contents of the box set by itself, and to make the points match, we added another unit of Tyranid Termagants and another unit of Barb Gaunts to the Tyranid side as well. It actually even seems to be a little bit more than that. They do have 5 extra Barb Gaunts, but they also have 20 extra Tyranid Termagants, basically doubling the numbers that you'd find in the box. It kind of feels a bit more like adding 2 extra units there, even if they were just blobbing them up into big squads of 20. They also added in another Ripper Swarm as well, just so you could actually field them. The Leviathan box just comes with the 2 sets of Ripper bases, which you can't make into a full unit without a third one, or a stand-in for a third base. It really does mean that there's really quite a big points disparity between the two sides. Currently in 40k, Termagants are 7 points, even if they drop down to 6 or something, that's still going to be quite a lot extra. Looks like with those sort of numbers of models added, you're probably in the 150 to 200 point sort of range of extra models that you need to even the score. So maybe not too surprising that Tyranids have been getting smashed quite a bit if you are playing with the Leviathan box alone. Obviously this isn't exactly the biggest news in the world, but probably just something to be aware of if you are getting into Warhammer 40k with the box. But most Warhammer 40k box sets aren't really designed to be a perfect fair match between the two sides. A lot more chosen for just cool new unit sculpts inside the launch boxes like this, and maybe if we're being a little bit cynical, some of the models that Games Workshop might not be selling quite so well in some of their other Versus offerings. We've certainly seen a fair few Reavers and Heavy Intercessors over the years. It does mean that frequently quite a lot of their Versus boxes will be kind of horrible matchups if you played them 1 versus 1, but I feel like it's maybe less obvious with the Leviathan box set because the two sides look kind of even. The Space Marines are definitely a lot more elite, but the Tyranids get quite a lot more models and some bigger ones as well. Despite that though, it doesn't seem to be quite enough to tip the scales. It maybe does make some of the battle reports that are just Leviathan versus Leviathan a bit more slanted, and perhaps not too surprising that Tyranids are getting defeated on the whole. It's kind of interesting comparing it to the Indomitor's box set that came out for 9th edition. The Necrons vs Space Marines in that were actually fairly balanced in terms of points. They both had pretty much 1,000 points on the nose on the drop, but again even that didn't really save them from being unbalanced in reality. In general the Necrons tended to struggle a bit, and almost all of their units went down in points cost over the course of the edition, as they were just a bit of an underpowered codex at launch. I think it is also kind of interesting that when the box set was designed it looks like the rules were different. I've seen a couple of the Tyranid datasheets that appear to have quite different stats compared with the ones that they have released for download. For example, this one of the Neuro Tyrant that comes packaged with the instructions to make it. Looks like it might have been a bit easier to kill, but comes with the auxiliary Neuroloids to actually tank damage on this one. Plus the shooting attack looks a little bit more savage as well at AP-2 and damage 3, also picking up anti-infantry 2+. Looks like it was very low strength though, so maybe not really going to threaten anything besides infantry. I'd guess this will probably represent old previous rules, as small extra models on the board don't really work too well with Battle Shock. It seems that most of those have been rolled into their unit's base profiles if they have them. It definitely doesn't mean that you can't play a more balanced game from the box set as well though. We'll get the points hopefully in the next week or two, and it means that you could potentially either add more Tyranid units to even up the score as they did in the Warhammer Plus battle report, or the Space Marine player could maybe drop a unit, maybe leave behind a librarian or lieutenant or something, to make things a little bit more even. You'd also have the option of playing with the combat patrol as well. You can make the Space Marine one and the Tyranid one within the box set. In theory, they're supposed to be somewhat balanced against each other, so I guess that might give you a bit more hope for an even game Marines versus Nids. I did find it kind of funny though that it probably means that Games Workshop's campaign is likely to be a Space Marine victory. Seems that if the battle reports are any indication, it looks like if you play flat Leviathan with Marines versus Tyranids, the Marines will generally tend to win, all other things being even, if both players are of equal ability and they get similar sort of luck. I suspect that that's how quite a lot of people are going to be playing with their box set when they get it. It's kind of a bit too tempting not to, just have a whole bunch of the new miniatures going against just each other, play out the conflict of the Leviathan box. Quite a nice little manageable start to 10th edition 40k. The codes for the campaign are locked to the Leviathan box, so quite a lot of people are going to be targeted to that rather than playing other games of Space Marines versus Tyranids. So it kind of means that unless there's an absolutely massive shift and Tyranids just trounce Space Marines in the vast majority of the other games, they're probably going to win the campaign overall. Definitely not guaranteed, maybe loads of people will even up the score and play points balanced games, but I guess that it puts Marines odds on to get their reveals first, getting to see their next wave of units before the Tyranids get to see theirs. In reality, it's not exactly the biggest deal in the world, it won't affect the actual release dates for any miniatures, just the previews. But it seems if you were going to predict one side winning the campaign out of this, the Tyranids do seem to be a step behind compared with the Space Marines given the Leviathan box balance, so maybe the Space Marines will get to see their miniatures first, and Oghram will be held for the Imperium against the oncoming swarm. Finally, I would bear in mind that while gameplay is a thing, maybe the actual models and the cost of them might be a different story. I think that you could argue that the Tyranids get the best of this out of the box set themselves. Here's just a very rough breakdown of the Space Marine costs, how I'd expect Games Workshop to sell them for individually when they come out, around about £260 or $430. For the Tyranids, these are all estimates once more, but I'd expect they'd be around the £300 or $500 mark, just based on similar models and monsters for what Games Workshop tends to sell things for at the moment. I think even beyond these prices, you could perhaps argue that the Tyranids have an even better deal out of it, as Space Marine character models tend to be at least fairly costly for a single infantry model. Out of the Space Marines' £260 worth of value, £100 worth of that is made up of character models only, which I think people could see as a small negative in terms of plastic that you get for your money, even if the sculpts are rather cool. Even if they might be outgunned a bit on the battlefield, it might not be the worst news for Tyranids, as I think you could argue that they have a decent amount more plastic value in the box. Look forward to hearing your thoughts though, let me know what you make of the Leviathan box set balance, and how important is it that Games Workshop makes their launch boxes a fair fight between the two factions, or explain to players that if they want a fair fight you might need to even up the score a bit. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you've been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that one linked in the video description below if you'd like to help support. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.